It is impossible not to mention the name of Cleopatra VI in the discussion of the most powerful women in history. Some historical and ancient figures have shown their charisma and authority to such an extent that, in addition to becoming immortal in history, they became legends and national symbols of a country. Among all people, Cleopatra VI is also one of the most important ancient figures of this country, who is famous for her beauty, intelligence, politics, and high influence. Cleopatra VI's life was short, but the stories about it were so fascinating that it inspired many works of art, literature, and movies, since strange and special events are an integral part of the lives of rulers and famous personalities of history. Who is Cleopatra? Although when studying history, we know Cleopatra with titles such as Egyptian Cleopatra, and according to the documents, she was born in Egypt. But you should know that the origin of Cleopatra's family goes back to Macedonia, Greece. Cleopatra is a descendant of Ptolemy Soter, one of Alexander's greatest commanders. Cleopatra's family ruled Egypt for about 3 centuries. As a child, he learned to write, read, and speak Greek. When you think of the name Cleopatra, only one Egyptian queen comes to mind. But that's not the case. She was the 7th woman from the Ptolemaic dynasty to bear this name. Her full name is Cleopatra VIT, Philopator, which means father-loving goddess in Greek. Cleopatra was an Egyptian princess as a child, and her father was Ptolemy Xce. Ptolemy Xce was famous for his skill in playing the flute. Cleopatra's intelligence and shrewdness made her become the favorite child of her family, and she gradually learned the art of governance from her father. Cleopatra's actions in history. When Cleopatra was 18, Ptolemy Xce died, leaving the throne to her and her younger brother Ptolemy Zetiime. In this way, Cleopatra and her 10-year-old brother began to rule Egypt. Since she was the older sister, she quickly took the lead. But later, Ptolemy XIII grew older, and the thirst for power came to life in him, and he became the owner of the title of pharaoh and kicked Cleopatra out of the palace. 48 years BC, Julius Caesar entered Egypt. At the same time, Cleopatra disguised herself in a rolled carpet and secretly entered the palace and met with Caesar. Cleopatra asked him to support her brother to take back power. Caesar faced Ptolemy's security in the Nile War. After being defeated by Caesar, Cleopatra's brother ran away and finally drowned in the Nile. After that, Cleopatra and Caesar got married and had a child named Syrian Little Caesar. Cleopatra also had a younger brother, Ptolemy Xenzi, who ruled over her and her descendants after winning the Nile War. She married Caesar and traveled to Rome. Despite her romantic relationship with Caesar, Cleopatra wanted Egypt to become independent from Roman rule. So one of her most important tasks while leading Egypt was to strengthen the country's economy. He established many trades with Arab countries. Caesar was assassinated in Rome in 48 BC. After him, 3 rulers took power in Rome. One of them was Mark Antony, whom Cleopatra married. Cleopatra allied with Mark Antony against the other 2 rulers, because Cleopatra wanted her son to succeed Octavian Tsar's legal successor. Finally, with Cleopatra and Mark Antony, they were defeated in the war with Octavian Battle of Actium and returned to Egypt. Appearance and personality characteristics of Cleopatra. One of the most important reasons for Cleopatra's power was her increasing popularity among the Egyptian people. Unlike the previous Greek kings and queens, he mastered the Egyptian language and cared about the culture of this country, so that he used the clothes of Egyptian gods and myths in his clothing. And this had an effect on the people of Egypt to some extent, who believed that he was the embodied form of Isis. Also, during the power of this Egyptian queen, Egypt was developed. Cleopatra is portrayed in movies and art as a very beautiful woman, but according to the evidence, she was not that beautiful. The actual image of Queen Cleopatra can be found on ancient Egyptian coins, where she has a humped nose and a deep smile line. People believe that Cleopatra was trying hard to be accepted by the common people. So to emphasize her power and right to reign, they always painted her face more bony. In addition, the historian Plutarch wrote somewhere that Cleopatra did not have an attractive face at all, but her intelligence and charm, and her very beautiful voice were the talk of the town, and no one could resist her. Although some people have doubts about Cleopatra's beauty, there is no doubt about her high knowledge and wisdom. It is interesting to know that Cleopatra spoke several different languages and was skilled in mathematics, philosophy, rhetoric, and astronomy. It was to impress her allies. Cleopatra always wore beautiful clothes and entered the gatherings in splendor. When he visited Mark Antony, he arrived in Rome with a gold boat, purple sails, and silver oars. She was dressed like the goddess Aphrodite. Antony, who imagined himself as the incarnation of the Greek god Dionysius, immediately fell in love with Cleopatra and later married her. Death of Cleopatra. No one is sure of the cause and manner of Cleopatra's death, and there are various stories about it. Some of these narrations are romantic and mysterious. After the defeat at Actium, Mark Antony returned to the battlefield hoping for victory and was besieged. At this time, the false news about Cleopatra's death reached him, and he committed suicide. Cleopatra also committed suicide with snake venom after hearing this news. Interesting facts about Cleopatra. Cleopatra's level of education was so high that it is said that she wrote several scientific books in Al-Masudi language. He used the clothes of Egyptian gods along with luxury items to attract the attention of the Egyptian people. Her presence with these appearances had created a good image of Cleopatra in the minds of the Egyptian people. She had 4 children, one by Caesar and the next 3 by Mark Antony. Cleopatra considered her sister Arsinoe to be her rival. So in 41 BC, she assassinated her sister on the steps of a temple in Rome. Cleopatra is the last pharaoh of Egypt. She is also known as one of the most successful queens in history. According to ancient discoveries, unlike the Mediterranean diet, meat, fish, and simple food of the Egyptian people at that time, Cleopatra was more in favor of vegetables and nuts. It is mentioned in ancient texts that he was highly skilled in playing flute and harp. In addition to influencing movies and stories, the character of Cleopatra has also made its way into video games such as Assassin's Creed 2. So far, no definitive traces of Cleopatra's tomb have been found, although some theorists believe that his tomb is in the ruins of Taposiris Magna. She was a very brave woman to the extent that she led a military fleet in a war against the Romans. Mark Antony was so fond of Cleopatra that he divorced his ex-wife in order to spend more time with her. Like the Egyptian lady Nefertiti, she used henna to decorate her nails. Despite the experience of several marriages, he did not divorce any of his wives. If you like the video, like and comment.